are live. So I'm going to hit record and you can go, Jace.
All right. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the July 6th, 2017 meeting of the Kubernetes community. I'm your moderator, Jace Singer-DeMars. I am the co-lead for various SIGs, including SIG Azure. I am happy to take you through what will undoubtedly be a short meeting because of the holiday week in the United States this week. So we had a demo scheduled, but unfortunately that person had to cancel, so there's no demo this week. We're just going to go through the release updates, and right now 1.8 is in the cooker, and I'm not sure who is on board right now that can give us an update. I don't know if Maru's on or somebody else wants to give an update on that.
I'd like to give a brief update on the features. So I have sent an announcement to Kubernetes dev and various as a mailing list about the features development for 1.8. So features in the features repo milestone 1.8 is already open. So please proceed with working on your features for this release. And also I'd like to highlight that we have mutually agreed at the Kubernetes Leadership Summit last month about having this release like more focused on maintenance and sensibilities we had for Kubernetes 1.6. So we're expecting to have more features that promoted from alpha to beta to stable than receiving some early brand new features. So we would like to have that for the next iterations. Anyway, like all the detailed information you may receive from us at Kubernetes PM meetings and SIG release meetings. After we'll have the defined plan for Kubernetes 1.8 in terms of the features of the roadmap, on the product strategy, and the release schedule assist. That's all from me.
Great, thanks, Igor. And just for everybody on the call, it's always a good idea if you can just periodically attend the SIG PM or SIG release meetings, just so you can kind of see what the details are for behind the scenes, the releases, because I think it's really interesting to know, and definitely helps you understand more about why these processes exist, because sometimes it can feel a little bit process heavy, but they serve really important functions in the release process. So 1.7.0, first of all, amazing. I wish that I was on the community meeting last week, but holy moly, what a performance. So proud of our community and all the hard work that went into it by everybody in the release team. So if you know one of the release team members, give them a hug or some sort of acceptable kind thank you for their work. So for the 1.7 release, we have an update from Chow. If you're on the call, that would be great.
Yeah. Chow from Google. I was the release 1.7 branch manager. So as everyone knows, 1.7.0 was out last Thursday, and we have a blog update. I'm going to, so the release team is going to hand off the responsibility to the patch release manager, which is Wojtek. He's also from Google in the Warsaw team. So I checked the release 1.7 branch health yesterday. There were 2 test infra issues. One is fixed. The other one is assigned to the test infra team, and they are actively working on it. There are a few PRs needs to be cherry picked. I will go through them today and approve them as appropriate. And I think since tomorrow or maybe next week, Wojtek will be the one, everyone that needs to be tagged for cherry pick candidate. He'll have the approval. He will have the right to approve the cherry pick. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you very much. And obviously, once we have 1.7.1 on deck, definitely let's make sure that the community knows that that's on its way. Anthony, are you around for a 1.6.7 update?
Yes, just a quick update. 1.6.7 went out yesterday. The main things were some fixes that you may have encountered if you use GCP, Fluentd, was having problems, so those should be fixed. But there's also a lot of other little fixes, so please check out the release notes.
Great. Thank you so much for doing that. You've had a very high number of point releases as the patch manager, and thank you for all the hard work that you've done there. SIG updates. I believe either David or Timothy are on deck to give update for SIG scheduling.
Yeah, this is David. I'm here. I'm not sure if Tim is there. We don't have a ton of update. We can talk a little bit about what is going on for 1.8. We haven't finished the planning for that, but have a few of the items kind of lined up. So one of them, probably the biggest one, is finishing the work that was partially started for 1.7 on priority and preemption. So the idea is that we're introducing this concept called priority class that each pod has, and it turns into a numeric priority that then the scheduler can use to preempt lower priority pods if the cluster is full. So this solves a bunch of problems. One problem that it solves is this problem that we've been using this kind of hacky thing called the rescheduler to solve, poorly named rescheduler, but that things like DNS and Heapster can always schedule even if your cluster is full of user pods. So that will be replaced with this different mechanism where those kinds of pods will have higher priority, and then if they can't schedule, they can evict lower priority pods to get scheduled. This is a more general mechanism that not only solves that problem for system pods, but also users can prioritize their own pods so that if the cluster gets full, they can decide which ones run and which ones have to wait when there's more work to do than the cluster can handle. So that's the biggest thing that's going into 1.8 from SIG scheduling. That's at least that's on plan. Obviously, things that don't always get finished in time, but we're optimistic about that getting finished. And then the other items for 1.8, I'm trying to pull up the list here. Tim, was there anything else that you wanted to add? Are you on there?
And the one thing that's people probably want to be aware of, especially if you're on SIG cluster lifecycle, is the proposal that Klaus had made with regards to changes to daemon sets. That I don't think it's going to be executed on entirely in the 1.8 cycle, but we'll try to get a proposal cleaned up. The basic premise is that we want to move the functionality for scheduling of daemon sets from the controller manager into the scheduler eventually. I think it might go through a couple of phases and iterations to get there, but that's the current gist. It does need to take into account some of the constraints that currently exist inside of the current handling of the system. And right now, people are using daemon sets in ways to get around the scheduler because of conditions that exist. And they're basically bootstrap conditions. So if folks, I'll put a link inside of the community meeting minutes. So if folks are interested, they could take a look at the proposal.
Yeah, I think, and some issues with that were recently brought up. So I think there will be some more discussion about that before anything is like kind of executed on. But yeah, people should definitely take a look at that. I don't have the issue number here at the moment, but yeah, that's a good one. And actually, one that there's a doc, but I don't know, and there's also an issue for it. One other is that Avesh from Red Hat has been working on the rescheduler. It's a little confusing because there's kind of a thing called the rescheduler in Kubernetes already, but this is the anyway, a different rescheduler, let's put it that way, that will do things like that will spread pods from overutilized nodes to less utilized nodes, and things like that, to try to kind of make the cell layout healthier by moving pods around, of course, while respecting things like pod disruption budgets and so on. And this is something we've talked about for a long time. It solves a bunch of problems. For example, like you have a multi-zone cluster, one of the zones goes down, all of the pods get rescheduled to the remaining zones, then that zone comes back up. How do you fill that zone with work once it comes back up? Like nothing is going to put any work onto that zone unless something moves pods onto the nodes in that zone. And so that's one of the kinds of problems that the rescheduler solves. It also will, like I said, like if you get an imbalance in the load across pods, across nodes for other reasons, it can help balance that out. So Avesh from Red Hat has been working on that, and he may have something in 1.8 for that. And by the way, I found the issue for the thing Tim just talked about, the daemon set pods being scheduled by the default scheduler, and it's 42002. So anyway, I think those are the main things. Tim, anything else?
The one last bit I think that's worth mentioning is we're probably going to be, me, Andy, and Bobby will probably be taking a look and trying to rationalize the world of component config to config maps to how are we dealing with file handling inside of the scheduler. There's currently 3 separate ways that data can be slurped in by the scheduler. We want to rationalize that to a clean mechanism, or a concise, clean mechanism that aligns with what other components are doing in the system. Namely, the kubelet has started this route. So that's currently in process or in flight for 1.8. How long or how much gets done in 1.8 is debatable at this point.
And actually, I found 2 more, but these will be real quick. One is we're hoping to move this thing called taint-based eviction from alpha to beta. So the idea right now is that today we have an alpha feature where things like node not ready or node unreachable, the way the system normally works, those show up as node conditions, as everyone knows, and then the node controller evicts the pods after 5 minutes. So this feature will represent those. They'll continue to be represented as node conditions, but they'll also be represented as taints that will trigger eviction. And so the logic inside Kubernetes will switch from using the node condition to trigger the eviction to using the no execute taint to trigger the eviction. And the reason this is useful is that then pods will be able to tolerate that no execute taint and then be able to stay on a node for however long they want. Instead of 5 minutes, the default is 5 minutes. If you don't do anything, then it'll continue to just be 5 minutes. But if you want to stay on the node longer or shorter when the node becomes unreachable from the master, or the kubelet starts reporting not ready, then you can select how long you want the pod to stay on the node, and that is on a per pod basis. So we're hoping that can get into 1.8. That was alpha in 1.7, but hopefully we'll get to beta 1.8. And then the last thing was being able to configure the scheduler policy using a config map since the beginning of time, since before I joined the project. the scheduler policy could be changed. And by scheduler policy, I mean choosing which predicates get used by the scheduler, and also what are the weights of the priority functions could be modified using a configuration file on disk that the scheduler would read when it starts up. And there was work done in 1.7 that we're hoping will be finished and merged in 1.8 that allows the scheduler to take that configuration from a config map instead of from a file on disk, so that users can change it easily while the system is running without having to change a file on the master node. This is kind of related to what Tim was talking about with the component config. Anyway, that's kind of the last feature that I can remember for 1.8. So I think we are done, unless Tim has anything else.
I'm good.
Cool. That was a great update. And if you could go into the notes, David, and just maybe make sure that the notes are accurate and also complete, that would be great, because George was running out of fingers. So,
yeah, sure,
Fabian, you're up for instrumentation.
Yeah, so we had quite a few things happening since the last time we updated here. So Heapster 1.3 and 1.4 got released. In total, we added an event sync for Riemann, and there's now support for Elasticsearch 5 and Graphite. And there are now retention policies supported for InfluxDB. But probably the most important thing is that the master metrics API is now directly supported by Heapster, which is basically the groundwork to actually allow different backends to feed things like the HPA, so that you don't actually have to run Heapster anymore if you want to use certain cluster features like HPA or kubectl. And yeah, a bunch of minor bug fixes. Yeah, and overall, this master metrics API, it's basically ongoing work as far as I understand. And currently, Solid for Method is building tooling around actually making it really easy to just write your own metric API server so that you can back them by Prometheus, InfluxDB, so you don't have to run Heapster to actually collect data if you have already some mechanism in place to do all that for you. And then we have kube metrics. We are kind of shooting to get this to 1.0 because it's pretty widely used by now, and the metric set stabilized more or less. We are continuously adding more stuff, but the ones we have don't change anymore that much. So we just want to make a clean cut and let people know that everything that's currently there is reliable and will stick around. And what we sort of need for that is just to iron out a few tiny nits and get some performance testing done. So how does it behave in clusters of like 5,000 nodes? Google volunteered to help us with that because we can't do. Sorry? Anyone say anything?
I think it was just ambient noise.
Okay. Yeah, so that's sort of what happened so far. I think nothing much happened on the event logging side and logging in general from our side. But as an outlook for the next few months, yeah, we just want to wrap up these this tooling around building your own metric API servers, and this should move into the Kubernetes incubator. And we are kind of investigating right now what an API could look like that supports historical metrics, because the master metrics API we have right now just lets you basically query the current state. But for some cases like idling and the VPA, apparently, it's quite useful to actually query history as well. And it's sort of up to decision if that can be integrated into the current API or whether this needs a new one. Yeah, and that's basically it.
Great, thank you so much for the update. We had a request in the chat for somebody from SIG Instrumentation to update the community repo description, just so that it's more, I guess, accurate or longer. I didn't read it myself, so if you could add to that, that'd be great.
Yep, we'll do.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that concludes our SIG updates at the moment. Is anybody else, SIG representative in this meeting that wants to just bring anything up before we move on to the final section of announcements?
We'll put in a quick word for SIG testing. Not that I have anything formal to present today, but we have issues representing the majority of what we plan on working on for V18 and the rest of 2017 in testing for repo. We're going to do a final scrub of that at our meeting next week, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. And then I plan on presenting to the community a little more formally what our roadmap is. We would love additional help on pushing some of this forward. I'm sure we're all aware that we want testing to be better. I think Phil Whitrock specifically has put some awesome proposals forward in the community repo around improving our CI signal. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this during the 1.7 retrospective tomorrow. So anyway, if you want to talk more about testing related stuff or come help out, SIG testing Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Pacific.
This is a kind I had a request. I think I mentioned it last one of the previous meetings, and maybe it's already been discussed here. If so, I apologize. But we, from a PM SIG perspective, would like to make 1.8 in accordance with the Kubernetes leadership meeting a stability release. And so we'd like to set some guidelines around what type of features should be in 1.8. And we'd also would like to have a discussion in this meeting about follow-up from the leadership offsite.
Aparna, do you want to add that as an action item for the next community meeting? Should we put that as a specific topic to discuss?
That would be great, yeah. And I think that there are some notes, and the folks that presented at the leadership offsite can perhaps give a debrief, and we can discuss follow-ups.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I'll make sure that that's in the agenda for next week.
Thanks so much.
And I also wanted to add something too, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but SIG testing seems to be a really great place to get involved, especially if you're just getting into the project, because there are a lot of things that need to be done that don't necessarily require as much deep coding experience. Am I correct in that? Like, there's a lot of help needed in things that are not necessarily writing code.
We could use a lot of help around actually documenting how things work. I feel like every time somebody comes to the project the first time, they're like, how do tests work? And we point them at docs and they're like, yeah, but 90% of that is cruft. We could really use some help in actually chipping away at the cruft. If not SIG testing, contributor experience is also a great place to share these stories and collect actionable feedback. One other, this is kind of a technical thing, but one other thing I'll just throw out there for 1.8. I want to get non-Googlers on the test infra rotation, eventually leading to non-Googlers on the build cop rotation. I plan on helping flesh out documentation and actually filling that role as much as I am able. And if anybody else is interested in helping out, that would be a fantastic and very much appreciated way of getting involved.
And so should people email you to get that info? To volunteer or to coordinate with you on that? What's the best way to reach you? Come show up at the SIG testing meeting and I can post a link to an issue where I have asked the questions that anybody who's interested in doing test infra or on call would be interested in. Like, what are the responsibilities? What do I need to know to do this? What credentials or tools do I need to have to do this? This is definitely a journey of personal and professional discovery. And if anybody wants to join along, that'd be great. Great, thank you so much.
Chris Short's question on what rotations, my understanding is there are two different, there are actually 3 different rotations, I guess. There's a user support rotation. Brian Grant sent out an email to the Kubernetes dev mailing list a little while ago about, like, people often ask questions and the response is to shove them over to Stack Overflow or to Slack or post a link to our troubleshooting guide on the website. That takes an awful lot of time. And sometimes it seems like people who've been experienced in the use of Kubernetes, but maybe don't know the nitty-gritty of how to review a pull request and look at lines of code could be super valuable in helping us triage off user support. However, at the moment, I think Bitnami or Box, or very few people have volunteered there. That's yet a third effort, which I guess maybe contributor experience would be the SIG that's owning that. There are two other technical rotations. One is BuildCop. BuildCop, correct me if I'm wrong, people, is the one that's responsible for like making sure that the build doesn't break. They can start and stop the submit queue if needed. They can manually merge things. They have superpowers, but they need to be used with great responsibility. Test infra is basically what's going on with the tests? Why aren't the tests passing? Where do the tests run? So things like the maintenance of Prow, understanding why, being able to expand quota or do janitorial tasks on tests that are failing because we've run out of subnet quota in a given Google project. But I am literally making all of this up on the spot because there's no document for what a test infra person's responsibilities are. There is a document for a build cop's responsibilities, but I think that could also stand to be fleshed out. And I plan on helping out with both of these as much as I can by attempting that role and finding out when I can't do something or when I don't know how to do something, how we can improve that process.
Great. Thank you so much. And did somebody else have a question?
Oh, I was going to say the trying things until they don't work and then trying to get feedback on them is fundamentally how we are improving Kubernetes. So we really need people to try things that look like they may or may not be able to do them, and both learn and ask questions and get support from the people who have been with the project a lot longer.
Huge plus one of that. It's a great opportunity for people to learn how an open source project should work. All right, any further thoughts from any SIG leads or anybody else before we move on?
I'm not a SIG lead. This is Zach Corlison. I'm the new editor for Kubernetes docs. Agreed that there's a high cruft percentage of documentation currently. I just wanted to report in that there is a lot of cruft. I'm still coming on board, but information like helpful places to concretely point new contributors and new testers is really awesome. So as Jennifer Rondeau mentioned, there is a larger conversation about where to point new contributors to, and that kind of information is really helpful. So I expect that we will see action on that within the next, hopefully within the next 30 days, we'll see something concrete go into the new contributor guidelines and something to make contribution easier for people who are new to the documentation.
Thanks, Zach, and welcome. Sorry we didn't meet yesterday. See you later today.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, and moving on to announcements. So tomorrow at the same time as this meeting, we will be having the Kubernetes 1.7 release retrospective. This is a chance for us as a community to rally around what happened during the last release and learn from it, and hopefully get some great concrete suggestions to make 1.8 even better and move our community forward. So if you could, please click on the document that is linked in the agenda and go through and add your items to the list of what you think could have gone better, what you think went well, and what would you like to see changed for 1.8. The more bullet points we have in there ahead of time, the less awkward silence and me sitting there waiting for people to write things during the retro, which is always appreciated. So. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what comes up from that. Again, I just want to thank everybody. Their amazing efforts in 1.7. It was truly, truly astounding to see that come together. So I believe that's it. Any further announcements? All right. Well, thank you all for your precious time. It looks like we've got a half hour back, and looking forward to seeing you at the retro at 1700 UTC. and have a great rest of your day. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Bye.